Well, first of all, I just love skiing. Like, so much. There's nothing in the world that brings me more joy, ever.
Yeah, I'm scared to death right now, but I've got this. Like, I know deep down inside, I'm capable of what I'm about to do.
I came back way stronger. I felt like the rehab was pretty simple and straightforward. And I learned how to appreciate my body and how to take care of it, what to eat and like to stretch. I was 18, so I felt like I was invincible at the time.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Athletic Stance Podcast, a skier's perspective with your host, yours truly, Scott Chrisman. In this podcast, I have made it my job to go out and interview skiers at the highest level of the sport, to explore their perspective on life, what shaped and influenced them to become the person they are, and a whole lot more. First, let's take a look at our sponsors, because without them, none of this is possible. Our first sponsor is Northwest Tech. If you haven't heard of them yet, you're missing out. They hand make customizable 3-layer outerwear to order in the Pacific Northwest, and that means you know that it keeps you warm, dry, and looking unique while you're sending it around the mountain. They've been generous enough to give me a coupon code for my listeners. Use the code AOS75 to get $75 off any custom piece of outerwear. Their site is in the show notes. Our second sponsor is Organifi. Organifi makes organic superfood drinks, proteins, and supplements. These guys are awesome. Their product is top-notch and keeps me healthy and happy throughout the entire season. Use the code AOS for 15% off over and above any other sale that they're having. Their site is in the show notes as well. Check them out. Just like with Lexi, I gotta sit down in person and interview our next guest. This woman is spunky, soulful, wise, and has been through her fair share of ups and downs in the industry. She's been in countless MSP films to the point that it's not really one without her anymore. In this conversation, we'll talk about injury, mindset, death, nutrition, the environment, and get a chance to see what the world looks like through Michelle Parker's eyes. Let's check it out.
My name is Michelle Parker, and I am from Squaw Valley, or Lake Tahoe, California. I'm a professional big mountain skier, and gosh, I've been doing this for 14 years now.
Crazy. 14. What was your first film appearance?
First film appearance was definitely with Brad Holmes, and his production company was called Chainsaw Productions, and we filmed a movie called Star Skis and Hucks.
Nice, awesome.
Yeah.
I've never seen that. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, I must have been like 17 or 18 or something.
Yeah. Crazy. How old are you now?
I'm 30.
30. Did you grow up ski racing? How did you get into skiing? What was that path like? Did you?
Well, I was born in Truckee and grew up in Squaw Valley, and growing up in Squaw Valley at the time, skiing was like my daycare. Like, the bus would literally take us from school to the mountain, and then we got to ski for the afternoon from like 12 o'clock till 4. Yep. And then your parents would pick you up at 4 at the big tree at the base of the resort.
Yep.
And it was that way all the way through high school. Like, in high school, we had a 4-block system, so on the 4th period, I could get out and do what we called physical education.
Yep.
And I convinced my teachers that I could go skiing for that
Yeah.
block of time, and that was always the way. So skiing kind of raised me, like being in the mountains and being at Squaw in particular. And then when I was in high school, my eyes were opened up to like all the amazing skiers that were around me, like C.R. Johnson, J.T. Holmes, Shane McConkey, Ingrid Backstrom, the list goes on, Jamie Burge. Like, we had amazing athletes in our local area. So I was ski racing at the time. And we also had like Julia Mancuso and Johnny Mosley and all these athletes and quite a condensed small community. So that was really cool. And then I was just watching these guys, and I just always loved skiing powder. So I was like, oh, maybe ski racing's not for me. And when I was 15, I decided to quit ski racing. It was like quite expensive for my parents to be paying all the money to go ski racing and travel and stuff. And
Totally.
my passion had changed. And then I got into skiing in the park. I kind of got recognized skiing the park in Tahoe, and that was like my in to the ski industry.
Totally. Sweet. Do you have any morning or evening routines that you stick to? Like, we travel a lot, you travel a lot, so it's hard to kind of stick to a routine, but do you have anything that you like have to do in the morning or have to do in the evening?
I'd say in the morning I wake up, and typically I try to start my day with thinking about some sort of intention for my day, of something good that I want to do or something positive or happy, and then I pretty much get out of bed and make coffee. But yeah, that's been a pretty regular routine. But before skiing, I've got a lot of early mornings and a lot of long days, so sleep's important to me. So I'll kind of do a little bit of like warm up, like just a little yoga maybe in the morning, and then eat something light and healthy, and then get out in the mountains.
Yeah, totally. Do you have a specific diet that you stick to?
I'm a firm believer in balance, and I've had my blood tested and tried to figure out what exactly works for me, and surprisingly I can pretty much eat anything. And there's things that I need to add into my diet, like there's specific supplements that I discovered strictly from having this blood test that are things that like my body needs, and I know that I need them, so that's been really helpful.
Yep.
But yeah, when you're traveling, it's so hard for me to say like, oh, I'm gluten-free or I'm vegetarian or this or that, so I try to just eat everything and be really aware, like my diet would be organic, local, and in season would be my like diet that I stick to basically.
Totally.
And like less meat than I try to cut out the meat, even though based on my blood test I'm supposed to eat meat, but I try to cut it out because that's environmentally bad.
Yep, totally. We talked about the same thing with Angel 2 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
She like cut out meat from her diet, but then she was just feeling like crap, like getting depressed and anxious, and so she put meat back in her diet. And
yeah, I had some
feels a
weird
lot
health
better.
things with it too. Like I would get really lightheaded, and I think I needed iron and I needed blood flow, and
Yep.
But I've minimized it a lot, and I try to be really conscious of where the meat's coming from.
Yeah, totally. I think that's like super important. One of the amazing things about living in Crested Butte or around here is like you can look out when you're driving and be like, yep, that's the like I get meat
Totally.
from those cows, which is awesome.
Yeah, I've been known to buy a local cow and keep it in the freezer.
Yeah, totally. Where do you live now? You still live in
I live in Tahoe City.
Tahoe? Yeah, sweet. Is there good access to like farmers markets and stuff like that there? Or?
Yeah, we have an amazing farmers market that's right down by the lake, and you can bike there and get all your produce. Really good fish and meat there as well. And then I'm also a part of the CSA box, which, to be honest, I can't remember what CSA stands for, but basically once a week we get fresh and local, like within a 100-mile radius, fruit and vegetables delivered.
Sweet.
And we just pick it up at the local spot, and we have bountiful amounts of really good organic veggies and fruits.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we do something like that out of Paonia.
Mm-hmm.
The whole summer. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
For sure. Local food, it's where it's at, for sure. Did you go to the premiere in Denver?
I did. We went to the Denver premiere, was just over a week ago now, and it was a blast. I'm really psyched on Matchstick's movie this year. It brought the stoke, and everyone was laughing hysterically. I'm pretty sure I laughed the entire time.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's just started to go on tour, and I'm excited to run with it because everyone was psyched. Like, you could just feel the energy of the place, and it got me fired up. It kind of switched my mind to be like, oh yeah, winter's right around the corner, and I got all psyched on it.
Totally. It seems like it's like back to the roots of MSP versus like they went super artistic last year, which I thought was really awesome. It definitely wasn't a crowd favorite. There was a lot of impatience in the audience that I was in, at least. Like, I really loved the whole storyline behind it and thought that Ben Sturgelowski did a really amazing job, but yeah, you were a part of that, weren't you?
Yeah, I went on one trip with them, and I blew my knee on that trip. But we, like, on that trip, worked so hard to get these really unique camera angles. We set up cable cams, and the filming and the cinematography was amazing. The storyline was really cool. I think that was a movie that was... I enjoyed it so much watching it at home and really getting to hear the audio and stuff. It was tough, like, audio in a film premiere is so hard.
Totally.
But I loved, like, the imagery, and I think Ben has this incredible vision, and he's super creative. I love that guy for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
Ben's an amazing dude. Maybe I can catch him for an interview.
Yeah.
That'd be sweet. I should.
I'm sure you could.
I'm gonna try and do some photographer and videographer interviews. I think that'd be really cool. Because they're, like, you know, they're so vital to our sport. So vital.
And they're like
them.
the artists behind everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you mentioned getting injured and blowing your ACL, and there's mental hurdles that you go through where you don't get to express yourself in the same way that you normally do, you know, like when you're skiing, at least for me. Like, I'm expressing myself, and it's like I have, like, a paintbrush, and it's my art. And, you know, when you don't have that outlet, sometimes it can drive you crazy. What do you do, or what did you do when you...
Well, injuries for me in my career have been a pretty regular thing.
Yep.
I've had 5 knee surgeries at this point, and so I feel like I've learned to deal with them quite well. The first one, I did my ACL, clean ACL. It was, like, actually super easy to come back from. I came back way stronger. I felt like the rehab was pretty simple and straightforward, and I learned how to appreciate my body and how to take care of it, what to eat, and, like, to stretch. I was 18, so I felt like I was invincible at the time.
Yep.
The second one was ACL, meniscus, medial patellofemoral, microfracture, cartilage damage, like this whole gamut of different ligaments, and that one took 2 surgeries, and having 2 surgeries is much different than having 1 surgery, and that one was way more mental for me. And that one was actually, you know, it was my first ACL. I had, like, this moment where I was crying, and my dad came up to my room. He was, like, kind of taking care of me, and he was like, well, crying's not gonna do you any good, so you should probably change that mindset. And I pretty much, like, a light switch went on in my head, and I was like, you're right, Dad. Like, what good is crying gonna do?
Yep.
And since then, I've carried that, like, notion of positivity with me through these other injuries. So the second one was, like, this crazy mental battle, in that it was a really painful recovery. Like, every time I went to physical therapy, it hurt really bad. I had Tourette's. I was, like, screaming at the top of my lungs, and found that, like, if I could walk into that physical therapy office every single day with a smile on my face and be like, this is a healing process, then I kind of got psyched, and I started going to school and started using my mind in different ways, and that was a much more spiritual journey for me, to be honest. Like, it was all about meditation and focusing my mind and being positive and really instilling those things in my mind first and foremost. And we spend all this money on getting your body right, but, like, your mind is equally, if not more, important.
Totally.
This third injury, ACL meniscus, I had 2 surgeries again, and when it happened, it was another blow because I feel like I've already been through the ringer with my knees.
Yep.
So I allowed myself, basically, it happened in Golden Alpine Holidays, and so I had to get helied out of this area into Golden, this town where I knew no one, and I was like, okay, there was one thing that I wanted the heli guy to stop and get, like, at the lodge, and it was my ukulele.
Yep.
And so we stopped and got my ukulele, and then I, like, had my ukulele and, like, a change of clothes, and then I flew down to town, and I got in a hotel, and I, like, basically the doctors there were like, well, you could drive home if you really want to, and I called my orthopedic surgeon, and he was like, worst case scenario, you could drive home, but, like, try to fly maybe or something. But I was kind of stuck in this town that was, like, in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
So I waited it out for 3 days, and then I was like, all right, I got this. I can drive back to California. And it was like a 20-hour drive, but it took me 3 days with a swollen knee. It was super painful.
Yeah.
And then I got home, had an MRI, and my doctor was awesome and looked at it right away, and he called me and he gave me the news. And in my head, when I found out, I gave myself 10 minutes. I was like, you can only have 10 minutes to be upset, and then after that, like, it's time to heal and time to deal with this.
Yep.
So for 10 minutes, I was like bummed out, and I was sitting on the couch, and I was by myself, and I was like really angry. And then the phone rang, and it was my girlfriend Kimmy Fasani, who's also been through the ringer with knees.
Yeah.
And I was like, she's the only person I would pick up the phone for right now. And I picked up the phone, and she kind of like worked through it with me a little bit and calmed me down and got me like psyched on the healing process. And so this injury, I just faced it with like super positivity. I was like, I got this. This is going to be awesome. And you learn something about yourself every time. Like, these injuries, as hard as they are, at times you can like really look on the bright side and find these new passions that you're interested in, like going to school again and learning. Or for me this time, I fully picked up the ukulele, and it's kind of been with me since the day I got injured. And now I'm like, I just bought my my third ukulele yesterday, actually.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Got all psyched on it. And music and that instrument is so happy, and it just like put me in a different headspace. Like, I'd sit down in bed, I couldn't do anything else, but I could play this beautiful musical instrument and totally suck at it, but like learn. And
Yeah.
yeah, and that was like it was a very healing instrument for me.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, music is super healing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Couple things. Did you graduate from school, or did you just go back to school for a little bit? What's the story with that?
That was so funny, actually. I was on crutches. I would go to physical therapy and then go to school, and it was like I took 6 years off from high school, and then I started taking these college courses at Sierra College in Truckee, where I was like really fascinated in what I was learning. I chose the classes based on what I wanted to learn about. They had nothing to do with like an end goal.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so
that sounds really cool.
Yeah, totally. And it was this really fun process, but I was really shy. I was like, I'm the new kid at the school, and I have crutches, and I'm way older than everyone else.
Yeah.
But it was so fun to go back to school and learn and just like use my brain. And I kind of always like learning and education's been really important to me, but I always believed in the self-education system too. Like, if I was interested in something, I would just dive in and get all these books and read about it.
Totally.
But going to school and having homework and like actually applying myself was a really fun thing to do. So no, I haven't graduated college.
Totally.
I just love learning.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, we're sitting in a college right now in a innovation and creativity lab, and like I just spend a ton of time around here because there's like amazing people who want to learn, who want to, like make an impact in the world. And they say that you're a product of the 5 people you spend the most time around. So
I like that. Yeah,
I love, just education in general.
totally.
What are like your top 3 favorite books?
Top 3 favorite books. I'd say my number 1 favorite book is Endurance, about Shackleton's journey down to Antarctica.
Okay.
If you haven't read it, that's definitely one to check out. I tend to lean towards these like action and adventure books that are based on true stories, and they inspire me so much to explore and to go to new places in the world.
Totally.
Shackleton was amazing. Yeah, write that one down. Endurance, that's my number 1 book, I'd say. Right now I'm reading Willie Nelson's book. I'm pretty psyched and fired up on the music. And I'm really into this book. It's an autobiography, and I love his outlook and perspective. But I don't know if it's in my top 3. Gosh, Shackleton, that's just an easy one. I haven't thought about number 2 and 3 much. I got into Shantaram pretty well, but I've tried to reread it, and I couldn't get back into it. That's a very philosophical book about life.
Okay.
I believe the author's name is Gregory David Isaac or something. Shantaram. What would the next one be? Maybe like Ishmael or something along those lines. I don't know. There's so many good books out there.
Yeah. There's seriously so many good books. So what is, obviously there's a lot going on in the political climate of everything, and, as skiers we see climate change and everything happening around us. one, just like what's your opinion on it all, and two, what what's one thing that any listener could take from this and apply to their life to like help out with what we're doing?
Well, my opinion on it all is that the science is there, climate change is real, and it's happening, and I don't think it should be a issue that's Republican or Democratic. I think it should be bipartisan and all across the lines. It shouldn't be the difference of voting on a different party based on their political stance. I believe on a personal level, it's been something that I've struggled with because my job requires me to travel. It requires me to use mechanized means of accessing terrain at times, and that's been something that I've made a huge effort, especially in the past year, to use my own feet, and that's my preferred method of travel in the backcountry, in the mountains. I love walking and hiking and climbing up mountains. The problem there is that there's not as many cinematographers or photographers that can be in those places with you to capture those moments, so I've started to like do a lot more self-capturing of these things. You know, Christian Pondella is a great example of someone who is incredibly strong in the mountains. He has really good mountain sense. He's a really solid partner, and he can be in those situations with you. It's actually driven me to take more photos of the athletes that I'm out there with, because I think I love photography and I love capturing that storyline of using your own 2 feet to access this terrain. It's a longer process. You don't get as much action. It's not as much like ski porn in your face, but the storyline is there, I think, and usually you go out there with like a goal in mind, whether that's climbing and skiing off the top of Denali or going to a new place that's in the middle of the Alaska Range that has never been skied before. So for me, my preferred way of accessing this terrain is by foot, but then you still are taking a plane to get there. You're still burning fossil fuels, and that's been something that on a personal level I've been struggling with, but I think just being aware of that and being conscious of taking that back and, you know, not jumping in the helis, not jumping on the trip that is all heli skiing, and trying to get the film companies I work with to be more driven to capture these human-powered ascents and descents is kind of been like a personal thing that I've been doing. And I mean, don't get me wrong, heli skiing is super fun, right?
Totally. It's awesome.
And snowmobiling is super fun, but it's like, for me, it's worth it to go out there and have longer, harder days. And I personally love the struggle and the input that I have when I'm in the mountains with my partners, and it just seems like such a slower pace, but you're enjoying so much more, and you're getting to know the people around you so much more, and you're getting to know your terrain, and you can approach the mountains with a sense of humility of as far as like learning from them and being immersed in them with your own feet rather than with a snowmobile or with a loud helicopter is so much more enjoyable to me. So I want to be able to capture that and spread that message for sure, but there's so much more behind that as well. Like when you're in the backcountry, you have to have a lot of mountain awareness and avalanche education. So like I promote avalanche education is like on the top of my list, and I co-founded an avalanche awareness clinic with a bunch of my girlfriends. But yeah, I think what was the second part of your question?
Like what's one thing that any listener could take away from this? And let me just hop in real quick. I feel like there's like it's like each moment when you're foot powered holds like a more infinite space then, and it's like less finite. Like when you have a snowmobile or a helicopter, like rescue is a lot easier. You're in and out quicker. There's just like the whole, every bit about it is like I feel like more finite in some ways. And like when you're out there, it's like you have to have this sense of community. You have to have the right people with you, and then like each moment just kind of feels like more full. I don't know,
more precious and more, it allows me to be in the moment a lot more. And to appreciate my surroundings, whether that's the people or the mountains or the snowpack, so much more. I feel much more like within the mountains and a part of the mountains than when there's I was in a helicopter once last year, and I like instantly noticed that my energy changed and the energy of our crew changed, and it was a different approach entirely to the mountains. And yeah, it's a huge part of our industry, but I don't think that, like, for me, it's maybe not for me. I don't know, but I don't like think it's a bad thing if other people are doing it. I think that we need to start taxing our carbon footprint, and I think that I'm all for that. But on a personal, or like on a wider reach, like what these listeners could do, you know, Angel and I went to DC last week with Protect Our Winners to go in person and lobby, and we spoke to, I believe it was about 9 different Republicans and a lot of Democrats as well, but we sat down with them in their office and spoke to them face to face and told them our concerns and told them what we appreciated about things that they had done recently. And that was a really unique experience, and we were not your typical lobbyist in DC.
Totally.
We had 3 like Olympic medalists with us who had their gold, silver, and bronze medal with us.
Yep.
So they were like passing it around, and all these Republicans and Democrats were taking selfies with the medals, and it was really cool to see them so fired up on us being there.
Yep.
And listening to us and our personal stories, and I think that made a huge difference. And, you know, however small that may be, it's a step in the right direction, but it did show the power of speaking up to the policymakers and voicing your opinion, because we all have voices, we all care about things, and if you speak up and tell your personal policymaker, you know, your thoughts on whatever thing it is that you're approaching them about, I think it makes a difference. They do listen most of the time, hopefully. I mean, they consider it, and I think the more people that get involved on that political stance is better, like reaching out via email, or I like to sit down and write a script out, my own personal script, and then make the phone call, and I get butterflies when I'm making the phone call, because you feel like it's really important and you don't want to mess it up and you want to know the backstory and all the information, but it's empowering to know that you can call. And I think that's really important, is we need to start telling our policymakers our thoughts and be involved on the political level.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's really easy to write off your voice in society because it feels like such a big ocean out there, you know, like, why would they listen to me? I'm just fill in the blank, you know, and we can make whatever excuse as to why our voice is small, but it's not. And, you know, any voice makes like an echo in the, you know, in a canyon. And so it's like, whoever it is, whatever your opinion is, at least sharing it and getting it out there, I think
Totally.
is huge.
Climate change has made me become way more politically involved than I ever was before.
Yeah.
And then simple things, like you could say, oh, it doesn't make a difference if I don't bring my own bag to the grocery store, but it does.
Totally.
And it doesn't make a difference if we don't use reusable water bottles, but it does. And purchase, you know, local, organic, and seasonal. My diet is based off of these environmental ethics that I have.
Yep.
And so everything, you know, changing your light bulbs, it does make a small difference, like using less power, your own personal carbon footprint, and being aware of that. I think just being aware and conscious of the impacts that you have on your environment, and even taking that a step further to the impacts that you have on the people that you're around. You know, I live in a house right now with roommates, and so I always think about it like, I'm gonna walk on my tippy toes until they wake up. Totally. Or I'm gonna try to like not affect their livelihood unless it's in a positive way. And I think just that awareness is key in being conscious.
Yeah, totally. I think the more just consciously, situationally aware you are, no matter what the situation is, whether it's in politics or climate change, or, you know, being in the mountains and understanding snow science and avalanches, or, you know, whatever it is, just, you know, the more situationally and like self-educated that you can be, better off.
And then being outside, I think the closer we are to nature, the more we care about our earth and our impacts on it. And I think too many people have gotten into this really, you know, society's got us in this crazy life today where everything is, you know, it's just, you can throw away everything and you can buy new stuff and you can consume and consume and consume. But I think it's so important just to like keep that touch with nature and to be outside and to enjoy the outdoors. And yeah,
you know, growing up in the mountains, ski racing for me, it's what led me like that, and scuba diving, and, you know, all the situations of being in nature are what led me to be an environmental activist. And, so I think getting out, and anyone that has kids, getting your kids out now so that they know.
Yeah, and that's really just a thing that you can prioritize. If you live in New York, you can go to Central Park. If you live in the city, there's still access to the outdoors, which is so important.
Yeah. What's one piece of advice or encouragement that you got sometime in your ski career that stuck with you? That's like something that you really...
Well, there's a few actually, but one in particular that just popped into my head was my first time ever competing in the X Games, and it was for halfpipe. It was the first time they allowed women in slopestyle or halfpipe to compete. So it wasn't slopestyle yet, it was just halfpipe.
Yep.
And you're at X Games and there's bright lights and the crowd's there and it's nighttime and you're in this icy pipe, and for me pipe wasn't my specialty, but I was standing up there and I was like, whoa, all of a sudden I feel all this pressure that I like never really wanted to put on myself with skiing.
Yep.
And I was standing next to C.R. Johnson, and he was like, just have fun. Like, that's all this is about. Just have fun with it. And I was like, okay, I love that. And I just dropped in with, like, a huge smile on my face and wasn't worried about getting on the podium. Like, that was never my intentions with anything. Like, I'm a competitive person, but with skiing, it's been such a passion-driven sport for me that I don't really want to crowd that passion with anything competitively driven.
Totally.
Yeah, so that's why I switched from, like, slopestyle and halfpipe competing to skiing in the mountains, because all of a sudden I was competitive with myself but no one else.
Yep.
And that felt natural to me. That felt really good. But yeah, so CR had a big impact with that one line he said, and with many other things, but that line stuck with me. And then I feel like JP Auclair, who I got to spend a lot of time with traveling in my earlier years, he, just the way that he lived his life was always really inspirational to me.
Yep.
He cared about other people. He was creative and artistic. He used to edit his own parts. He used to be out there with the camera filming.
Yep.
He just had a deeper level of what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I think a lot of his lessons that he passed on to me were like things that he probably didn't even know he was doing, but they've stuck with me for sure. Like being creative, and my passion in this sport has been changing. The more that I know about skiing in the mountains and about climbing, the more doors have opened up, and I've been able to explore the mountains so much more in this different way.
Yep.
And I feel like the same could be said about JP. He went from moguls to skiing in the park to doing huge double backflips to skiing in the backcountry to being a mountaineer and hiking up his lines and skiing down them. And my passion's kind of changed as I've gotten older, and the more experience I have, the more psyched I've been on like growing my ability in the mountains. And I think that's been a long road to get to where I'm at right now, and feeling confident and comfortable going to new ranges in Alaska that maybe no one's been to, and like just putting myself in that situation and with confidence. That's taken a long time, but I feel like I'm there and I'm so psyched. Yeah.
Totally. That's got to be like a super empowering feeling. Since we just talked about them, death is a part of this sport, and it's something that isn't talked about much in society. And I've been around a lot of death, and I think it's really important to talk about it. Is there something that you do to deal with the loss of a good friend, or someone that had a lot of influence over you?
Yeah. At quite a young age, I would think I was 12 or 13 when I lost my first two friends actually in an avalanche. They skied off the backside of Squaw Valley, and they were buried, I think 5 feet deep, about 3 feet apart from each other. And there was just a lack of knowledge. None of us knew what avalanches were or how to avoid them. So when I was young, that kicked off this crazy stream of dealing with death. Then it was like right after that my other friend died, and then my boyfriend's dad died, and then it's been just like really close people in my life. Like I can't even count on two hands how many people have passed. And I found that those first deaths hit me the hardest for sure. I didn't know how to deal with my emotions. I didn't know how to react. I was totally distraught and really started going a little bit crazy in my own head, just like emotionally not knowing what to do
Yeah.
and not understanding the process of life and death. And since then, death has seemingly gotten easier for me to deal with.
Yeah.
And for a while, I was getting really worried that I was becoming numb to it.
Yeah.
But I think the reality was that I was just becoming more experienced with it.
Yeah.
And the more experience I had in my own emotions and how I dealt with it, the more I dealt with it in a healthier way.
Yeah. Totally.
And like the last person that I lost that was really close to me was, at the time, the closest person in my life. He was my childhood best friend. His name was Timmy Dutton, and that one like has stuck with me for sure.
Yeah.
But I also feel like I dealt with it in the healthiest way that I have. And Timmy was a unique scenario in that we used to talk about death all the time really openly, especially in our community in Tahoe. We've lost so many people that were really close to us,
Yep.
that we've all been through the ringer together, and we have this crazy tight community, and we just know what each other has been through, and I think we have much more appreciation for each other as a result of that, and understanding of how to help each other in these situations.
Yeah.
And Timmy was so open about death, we like literally knew that he wanted bagpipes as memorial service, and we like knew what to do, and it was comforting to know that I felt like he knew that he wasn't going to be here for a long time.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that Timmy wants nothing more than everyone who he left behind to be really happy and stoked and fired up on life just as he was. And so I kind of like really tried to take that on as like my mission when he passed, and it was hard, and it still is hard. Like I think about Timmy every single day.
Totally.
But yeah, surrounding yourself with people who are caring and loving and who will listen to you and who will comfort you, and being healthy and positive and doing the things that you love, even if that's something that took your friend's life. For me, that's important. I think that, you know, skiing gives me so much joy that I couldn't really take that away from myself.
Yeah.
I think
Totally.
it puts things into check, and it makes me really cautious and aware when I'm in the mountains, and I'm always thinking about that in the back of my head.
Yep.
But yeah, it's been an interesting thing. You know, there's a while where after Timmy passed away, I had this really odd feeling that I was going to be next. Like, I was the next person in our community to pass away, for sure. I was, like, convinced of it. And to the point where it started haunting me. I'd get on the plane, fly to my next trip, and be like, whoa, what's going to happen on this trip? And I had this really heavy burden that I don't know where it came from. Just, like, being around death so much, I started to feel like it was going to happen to me. And it was unhealthy, and it was haunting. And I didn't tell anybody about it because I was ashamed about it in this weird way. Maybe because we don't talk about death super openly.
Totally.
But it came up with a girlfriend who had told me at the time that she had had that feeling after CR passed. She was really close with CR. And we started talking about it, and then I kind of brought it up to some friends who were psychiatrists and kind of talked to them, and they're like, that's a natural thing that you're feeling, and know that other people have that feeling too. And since then, I don't have that feeling anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm really aware of death.
Totally.
And really aware of the way that it affects community and your family and the people around you. And I like to think that I am conscious of that when I'm in the mountains, and understanding that my actions have a reaction, and
Yep.
I certainly don't want to pass away, and I certainly love
Totally.
life so much. So yeah, death is an interesting thing, and I think also it's important to remember that everyone deals with death differently,
Totally.
and that you need to be really respectful of how everyone deals with that, and
Yeah.
not take offense to things that people say or do, and
Yep.
support everyone when they're going through hard times.
Totally. All that resonates with me so huge. Like, I lost a friend at the age of 13. I watched her get hit by a snowmobile at a ski race, and, like, I had a crush on her. And did not know how to deal with that in any way, shape, or form, and it, like, really, like, I hid my trauma from that for the longest time until, like, recently, and then I started talking about it again, and I was like, oh wow, I've been carrying this around for a long time and didn't even realize it. And then I had a friend who passed away speed flying a year and a half ago, and I was supposed to learn how to speed fly from him, and I've since learned how to speed fly from his brother, and I got back here after going out and coaching at camp that Jordan, my friend who passed away, started. And I was speed flying out there, came out here and kind of stepped up the speed flying a notch out here. And in the last week and a half or 2 weeks, I've had that exact feeling that you're talking about, where you feel like you're next, or like death is just kind of haunting you.
Mm-hmm.
And I was gonna fly this morning, and I went up there, and whenever I see birds, I think of Jordan. It just reminds me of him. I feel like he's there, you know, enjoying the wind and the weather, especially like when they're soaring. It's just, you know, something that reminds me of it. And there was like a bird in a tree making weird noises instead of, you know, soaring in the wind. And the wind was all, you know, it was like kind of changing directions and getting a little gusty. And, you know, I made the decision not to fly. And but yeah, that feeling of like being haunted by it, or like feeling like you're next, is definitely, I don't know how to describe it, but I'm glad that I'm not the only one that has felt that, because I've never, like, that's the first time I've ever felt it. And I've had, you know, many friends pass away. Right after Ashley passed away, there was a kid that I was like one of the first people on the scene of at Mount Hood who fell into the rocks and ended up passing away. And so I had never felt that before, and now in the last like 2 weeks
It's a real feeling.
Totally. It was like this crazy existential crisis of like, what am I doing? Am I making the right decisions? Like, logically, yes, I'm making all the right decisions, and it's an amazing feeling to fly and like all this, but then there's just like this feeling like it's gonna take me, like it's gonna get me. And I think it wasn't, like, it's not necessarily rational, but it's real. It's there.
Yeah, it's a real feeling, and I'd be curious to dive into that more with like a psychiatrist or something. I don't know. It's a haunting feeling, and it really puts a burden on you.
Totally.
And it's this weird thing for me. Like, I didn't want to tell anyone about it because it scared me.
Totally.
Yeah, and it made me fearful. And when you're in the mountains, you don't want to have any sort of fear coming into your mind. And with that being said, it's important to not be ego-driven and to know when to say no and turn around or not drop in.
Yep. Speaking of fear, like, obviously there's some amount of fear that you always have at the top of a line, or, you know, whenever you're out there. What is like one technique that you use to overcome fear?
If I'm fearful when I'm dropping into a line, I first off try to recognize why I'm feeling that feeling.
Yep.
And if it's purely because I really want to nail this and I'm psyched on this line, but it's like this nervous, fearful feeling of not being able to ace it, then I'm like, okay, I'm going to visualize this. It's fine. This is well within my ability level. I can do this, and I can kind of shake that off. I don't like to drop in unless I'm 100% confident in what I'm doing.
Yep.
And so trying to separate that, like, intuitive fear from a non-logical fear is something that I try to be aware of. And that takes a lot of practice, and it takes a lot of knowing your own intuitions. And sometimes I've backed out of things that logically don't make any sense, but I've just had this intuitive fear, and so I've backed out of it. And that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing that's saying you shouldn't go on this adventure or you shouldn't drop in. You just have this weird feeling. But I can say after having these 3 separate knee injuries that, like, every single day that I've gotten injured, I have tried to back out and voiced my opinion. The first one was a contest, and it was a crazy weather day, and I told the director of the contest that I thought we should take the weather day and not ride that day. Yep. And he said, we're putting it on, and it was my sponsor that was hosting this contest.
Yep.
And I dropped in. It was really icy with a fresh layer of snow, and I cased the jump and blew my knee. And the second one, I was just exhausted, and I said I didn't want to go, and the photographer talked me into going and just making pow turns. But of course, you're out there, and then you start filming, and I hit a cliff and landed on a rock and blew up my knee. And the third one, again, I was just exhausted, and I like voiced that and said I didn't want to go. But it's really easy to get talked back into going skiing, your favorite thing ever.
Totally.
So I think for me, I'd like to say that I'm getting better at that, but clearly it happened last year. I think just being really in touch with your own feelings and knowing how to voice those opinions and concerns and your own feelings, and then that takes me back to something for me that's really important, is like doing everything for myself.
Yep.
And not because of anything that's ego driven, such as I'm doing this because I want to get an Instagram shot, or I'm doing this because there's a filmer.
Yep.
I'm doing this to better my film segment. Like, everything I'm doing in the mountains needs to be for myself.
Yep.
And I need to keep that in check. And if I'm doing it to get a shot, that's not for myself.
Yep.
So I always try to think of that. Or if I'm doing it to place well, like that stuff is all ego driven and is not a part of being in the mountains for me.
Totally.
So yeah, keeping that in check is really important for me. But typically when I drop in, I'm like 100%, I've got this, we're good to go. And if I have an inkling of something, then I usually fall. And like,
Totally.
or something like this is happening, or I don't stomp the line. So I'd really try to listen to that and try to take that in. And then taking deep breaths at the top of the mountain and just appreciating my surroundings and looking around. And I remember there was one time where I had like a ton of weather holds. Like, I'd stand on top of a line for 30 minutes and waiting for the sunlight to come through, and you get cold and you get anxious and you start rethinking things. But I used to carry a little incense with me, and I would just light incense up there and like kind of distract myself from everything that was going around and just like let myself be. And that was also really helpful with just calming my mind down and calming my body down with it.
Yeah. Totally. That's funny. Angel mentioned incense 2 days ago.
Really?
She uses, not like on the mountain, but she just like uses it to like help reset her mind and body as kind of like a daily meditation ritual.
I know, I've spent a lot of time with her.
Yeah.
She lights it every morning and meditates. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. We're like hardwired. Angel and I are like super different people, but I feel like our friendship has blossomed into this beautiful relationship where like we can balance each other out really well.
Yep.
I'm a fire sign and she's a water sign.
Okay.
So she can calm me down and I can get her fired up, and it's this really cool balance. But it was really fun to see her ritualistic like meditation in the morning and this kind of stuff, and mine was like so different, but it's actually so similar in so many ways.
Yep.
I think we have like a pretty similar mindset with it all.
Yeah, totally. From talking to you guys so closely.
Yeah.
So if you had one piece of advice to give to a kid that wants to do what you've done, what would it be?
Wow. This is such a crazy thing. It's a really interesting thing to me, actually, because if you ask all these professional athletes who didn't become sponsored through contests or didn't get to the point where they're at through contests, it's like, how do you get started? For me, I honestly built my name up through competing. But I think all of us would have a slightly different answer. And I think that for me, my biggest thing that I've told kids is just follow your passion with like love and with positivity. And if it's truly something you're passionate about and you work hard at it, then things will fall into the right place. And having a good attitude and being willing to skiing professionally is a job too.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that I don't think people really realize that you do.
Yep.
But it is hard work, and it is something that you need to be healthy for, and you have to have the right mindset. So I think just staying positive and on that track is good. And really what I've seen these people who have been really successful, I'm like, gosh, you have such a rad personality. Like, your personality matches your skiing, and that's epic, and people recognize that.
Totally.
So just like being passionate and true to yourself is probably the most important thing, I think.
Yep. I think if you look at a lot of the successful skiers, you either have people who are like quiet and let their skiing speak for them, like Candide or JP. Someone, I think they kind of have that style where their skiing is like, they're like silent and stoic, but their skiing kind of, is like, yep, that's a badass person. And then you have people who are like Sean Pettit and like Shane, who had these crazy
Big
personalities that
yeah.
are just like, yeah, we'll fill a room
Mm-hmm.
no matter what. But yeah, I think like matching your personality, or your skiing just like matches your personality
Mm-hmm.
in general, and that's I haven't thought about it that way in a long time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I find for myself, like, these people who I look up to, who I, like, my favorite athletes, oftentimes are my favorite athletes because of who they are as human beings, and not as much about their sporting accomplishments.
Totally.
And so, like, I always try to keep that in mind, too, just to be a good person and spread that love and light rather than, like, be the best skier.
Yep.
Because I used to tell myself that before a contest, like, if I was dropping in, I'm like, getting first place or last place doesn't make me a better person. So at the end of the day, what does it matter? It doesn't matter. Just go have fun.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that also comes back to making decisions for yourself, or like I call it being internally validated. Like when you're internally validated, nothing matters besides your own happiness and how you view whatever events occurred in the world, whether it's you got first in an event or you fell or you got injured or whatever it is. It's like being internally validated is the key. It's almost like the key to enlightenment in some ways, where like if you are internally validated, nothing can really push you too far off your zen or your your happy place.
Totally.
So.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. I actually had this funny moment on the race yesterday. I raced this race called, well, it's actually a charity ride, so technically it's not a race, but people are racing.
Yeah.
It's called Mountains to Desert. It went from Telluride down to Gateway, Colorado, and it was 132 miles, and I didn't know that I could have been competitive with, like, the top 3 women.
Yep.
And then I had this moment where I was like, the last part of the ride was an out and back, and I saw the top 3 girls come through, and I had this, like, and I waited at the aid station for, like, at least 30 minutes for my friend to catch up, and, like, so that we could ride the ride together.
Yep.
And I had this realization that, oh my gosh, if I had, like, tried harder, I could have maybe been competitive, but, like, since I stopped competing in slopestyle and racing, I haven't had that, like, real competitive urge to go, like, beat someone in a race.
Totally.
But all of a sudden I got really frustrated with myself, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, I could have tried a little bit harder and maybe placed, but I just, like, didn't have that internal drive when I started the race. Like, I was riding fast and hard and pushing myself because that was, like, what I personally wanted to do.
Yep.
But all of a sudden it clicked, and I was like, whoa, had this internal, like, really got mad, and it made me ride way faster at that last little bit, but I was like, what difference does it make? It just was, like, frustrated, and I was like, that was so funny and, like, interesting to feel that competitiveness come back up.
Totally.
But I was, like, so psyched. My close girlfriend and her boyfriend won the race, and I was like, yes, you guys rule, and they're, like, way more competitively driven in that regard.
Totally.
But I know that I also have that deep within. I like, don't know, biking's not, like, my sport.
Totally.
Like, the first race, and it was a race, the other one I did, like, a couple weeks ago in Idaho, I was, like, kind of battling out with this girl. She was ahead, then I was ahead, then she was ahead, then I was ahead. And I kept wanting to say something nice when I passed by, so I'd be like, oh, you're riding so strong, and, like, pass by her. But then I was like, what is that? If someone told me that and they passed me, it would fire me up so much.
Right.
They're like, oh, I'm gonna make a move now. And, like, if someone said that, I'd be like, oh, hell no, you aren't, and, like, charge after them. So it was just really funny. Like, I wanted to be, like, a polite competitor,
Yep.
but I, like, started getting all fired up. And then in the end, I was like, whatever, I just need to, like, go, and, like, don't worry about being nice right now, just, like, go.
Yeah,
but, like,
totally.
always being a good sport is, like, so important for me. But it's so funny, these feelings of, like, competitiveness, you know? It's really fun, like, a good, it's so fun.
Totally.
If you can keep it fun, right?
Yeah. And as long as your level of attachment to it isn't too much.
Totally.
I think that's when competition becomes overboard, when your attachment to it is like
Emotional.
a 10 out of 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, I need this. I'm, like, grasping out for it so hard. I think that, that's when you get hurt, or, you get emotionally hurt, physically hurt, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you look like a fool because you generally get angry. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
I can think of a couple times when I was like skiing urban and couldn't get the trick on or whatever, and like fall and throw a ski and yell, and you're like looking back on it now, you're like, wow, I was that person.
Dang it, yeah.
You know? But yeah, it's funny to watch like your own reactions or like your own emotions come up, especially in a competitive setting when you're like trying to be, I don't know, when you want to be competitive but you don't at the same time.
Totally. I was having such mixed emotions. I was like, oh, I haven't felt this in a long time, and then I was like, well, this is fun, and it makes me want to ride faster, which makes me like stronger and gets me more psyched to be stronger, and that's like healthy, and so that was good.
Totally.
But I had this like really, like I had like the angel and devil on my left and right shoulder telling me like, go harder, like, oh, be nice, but like be really nice when you pass her or whatever it is, you know.
Yep. Totally. That's so funny. What are you doing this winter? Do you have any projects that you have in the books? Like, what's your future look like?
When does this podcast come out?
It comes out on the 1st. So.
Yeah, I've got some different things going on next year that I'm really excited about. I'm working on putting together my own web series, which will be the first time that I've ever had total control, basically, of where I get to go, who I get to go there with, and what I'm doing, which is going to be really, really exciting. I have a production company up in Squamish called Real Water that I've worked with in the past on a Chris Davenport project. Sweet. And I think they're going to take it on. They've been helping me develop the storyline and working with Red Bull to really fine-tune it and bring it to life.
Sweet.
But I just got the word like a couple days ago that it was 100%. Nice. I was like joking, it was the 99% web series for so long. I was like, it's 99%, I'm not going to get my hopes up. But we just got the green light, so I'm really excited about that. And then working with Matchstick again as well.
Nice.
So
Awesome.
this winter will be very full. But that like web series just, you know, I went on 2 expedition style trips last year. It was the first time I've ever done a more expedition style trip.
Yep.
And one of them was to the Alaska Range, to this particular zone that Davenport's been looking at for forever. And we just like camped out on the glacier and hit it. We got dropped off by a plane, and all human powered. We had like 5 days of beautiful sunny weather, and we skied everything in sight. And the 6th day we're like, well, we could like re-ski stuff, but we were all pretty pinned, and we were all like pushing our level, I think, as far as like exposure and being out there. And so we were psyched to get out early and feel healthy and psyched on what we did, and
yeah, totally.
That was really fun. So more trips like this, and then I went to Denali too, which was a totally fun trip. Yeah, not like funded by sponsors and not for any reason other than to just have fun, which was like hilarious because it's a sufferfest, and I had like my hardest days in the mountains on that mountain in particular. But these trips that are like, yeah, human powered and or, you know, whatever, I'll probably use snowmobiles when I'm in British Columbia. In British Columbia, it's, like, so easy to access terrain off the snowmobile. But, yeah, just, like, these more trips that are really coming from things and ideas that I really want to do, and ranges that I want to explore more, and people that I want to experience those ranges with are exciting to me. And so I'm pretty fired up about that opportunity.
Yeah, totally. Where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram at myshellparker. I say it that way because Michelle Parker was taken, so it's MyShellParker. That handle is the same as my Twitter, and then my athlete page on Facebook is just Michelle Parker.
Cool.
Yeah. Sweet.
Is there anything else you want to add in? Anything that...
Gosh, I don't know. For all you injured folks, pick up an instrument. I always said I was never a musical person, and then I think the first step in learning an instrument is being like, yeah, I'm pretty musical. I got rhythm. I can do this, even though I didn't. But just like being open and being psyched, and then just staying positive and true to yourself is important.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Sweet. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it, folks. I I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Don't forget to check out our sponsors, Northwest Tech and Organifi. If you enjoyed the podcast, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. We'll be doing this weekly. And if you'd like to check out my free ebook about becoming a better skier, check out academyofskiing.com. Thanks for tuning in. And I almost forgot, a huge shout out to Toy Box, who did the music that you hear in the background. If you like what you're hearing, go check him out at soundcloud.com/toy_box, or check out the show notes for a link. Adios, guys, and happy shredding.